He had inherited his fondness for experimentation from his grandmother, a Kickapoo Indian whose John grandfather had captured and brought back to live with him far from her tribe. Despite this and the fact that he married her, she was never accepted as his legal wife by the grandfather's proud, intensely Yankee family. So John's grandfather had built this room at the back of the house, where his grandmother could spend most of the day doing what interested her most, studying the curative properties of plants. The room also served as her refuge from the family's attacks. One of their first was to give her the nickname the Kickapoo. Kickapoo, instead of calling her by her real name, thinking that this would really upset her. For the Browns, the words Kickapoo summoned up everything that was most disagreeable in the world. But this was not at all the case with Morning Light. Nice name, huh? To her, it meant just the opposite. It was an enormous sense of pride. This is but one small example of the huge difference in ideas and opinions that existed between the representatives of these two very different cultures. A gulf that had made it impossible for the Browns to feel any desire to learn about the customs and traditions of Morning Light. Years passed before they began to discover a bit of the culture, the Kickapoo, when John's great-grandfather Peter was very sick with a lung disease. His face was constantly purple from his fits of coughing. He wasn't getting enough air. His wife, Mary, knew something about medicine, since her father was a doctor. She knew that in cases like his, the body of the sick person is producing too many red blood cells. So it is advisable to perform a bleeding to counter this imbalance to prevent this excess of blood from causing an infraction or a thrombosis, either of which can sometimes cause death of the patient. So Mary started preparing some leeches for bleeding her husband. After she worked, she felt quite proud of herself for being up to date with the best scientific knowledge, which allowed her to protect her family's health using an appropriate modern method, not like the Kickapoo and her herbs. The leeches are placed inside a glass containing half a finger of water and left there for an hour. The part of the body to which they will be applied is washed with lukewarm sugar water. Meanwhile, the leeches are placed in a clean handkerchief, which is folded over them. Then they are torn out onto the part of the body where they are to be attached, held down firmly with the handkerchief and pressed into the skin so they don't pierce some of the spot. To continue, the bloodletting after the leeches had been removed, it helps to rub the skin with warm water to control the bleeding and close the wounds. Cover them with cloth or poplar bark, and then apply a poultice of breadcrumbs and milk, which is removed when the wounds have formed scabs. Mary followed this to the letter. But when she pulled the leeches from Peter's arms, he started to lose blood, and the hemorrhage could not be stopped. When the Kickapoo heard the desperate screams coming from the house, she ran to see what was happening. As soon as she went to the sick man and placed one of her hands on his wounds, the bleeding stopped. His family was absolutely astounded. Then she asked if they would please leave her alone with the sick man. After what they had just seen, no one dared to say no. She spent the entire afternoon at her father-in-law's bedside, singing strange melodies and applying curing herbs. Wreathed in the smoke of the copal and incense she burned. It was well into the night before the bedroom door opened and she came out, a cloud of incense surrounding her. Behind her appeared Peter, completely restored. After that, the Kickapoo was the family doctor. Within the North American community, she was widely accepted as a miracle healer. John's grandfather wanted to build a much larger room for her to carry on her investigations, but she didn't want one. In the whole house, she couldn't have a better place than her little laboratory. In her laboratory, John had passed most of his childhood and adolescence. He stopped visiting it when he entered the university, because the modern medical theories he was learning there were in strong opposition to his grandmother's theories, to everything he had learned from her. As medical research progressed, John remembered his grandmother's teaching and the initiation she had given him in medicine. Now, after years of hard work and study, he had returned to her laboratory. He was convinced that only there would he find the most advanced medicine. If he could scientifically prove all the miracle cures Morning Light had accomplished. Tita loved to watch him work. With him there was always things to learn and discover, like now, when he was making matches and conducting a class on phosphorus and its properties at the same time. Phosphorus was discovered in 1669 by Brand, a humbug chemist who was looking for the philosopher's stone. Why does everyone keep mentioning that? Stop trying to live forever, gosh. Anyway, he believed that metal could be transmuted into gold by mixing it with the extract of urine. Using this method, he obtained a luminous substance that burned with intensities such as had never been seen before. For a long time, phosphorus was obtained by vigorously heating the residue from evaporating urine in an earth retort in the neck, which was submerged in water. Today it is extracted from the bones of animals which contain phosphoric acid and lime. Talking didn't make the doctor careless in his preparations of the matches. He had no trouble separating mental and physical activities. He could philosophize, you know what I mean, about even the most profound aspects of life without his hands pausing or making a mistake. While he was talking to Tita, he kept on making matches. Now that we have the phosphorus mixture, the next step is to prepare the cardboard for the matches. Dissolve a pound of potassium nitrate in a pound of water. Stir it in a little saffron to add colour and dip the cardboard in this solution. When it dries, cut the cardboard into narrow strips and place a little of the phosphorus mixture on the end of each strip. Allow the matches to dry, buried in sand.